أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربي زدني علما. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Today's topic, as it was given to me, was the longest day or the day of judgment, and it's really ironic that it takes place today because a lot of people are considering today to be the day of judgment. But inshallah, we'll still be there tomorrow. Life will go on. So I know a lot of people are kind of plugged in. I myself am having a lot of anxiety of like trying to check my phone, have results come in, Whoever wins, and this is actually a great way to even start this off. Whoever wins or whatever happens, one of the functions of Iman, of our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is actually supposed to be that it allows us to be safe and secure. Ibrahim alayhi salam in the Quran makes the dua, Rabbi ja'al hada al-balad al-aminan. He says, oh Allah, make this place a place of peace and security. He's talking about physical peace and security. Not make this place a place of believing people, but of physical which most of us would think Iman means belief, means trust, all of these fanciful words. But actually he says make this place a place of physical security. He uses Aminan. Iman is supposed to give us just that, physical peace in our own existence. And actually it's interesting that the Day of Judgment is considered one of the six things that we have to believe as Muslims will occur. And it's supposed to be a source of us actually not being more afraid, but being a lot more calm about our existence. So the 6 articles of faith that most of us learn when we're children, amantu billahi wa malaikatihi wa rusulihi wa kutubihi wal yawmil akhiri wal qada qada'ihi. That there's 6 articles of faith that if you believe in these things, it will give you intellectual and physical safety and security. When I believe in Allah, I can understand my own existence. Asking that huge purpose of life question, why was I created? Actually, Allah created me, so my life has meaning because Allah has meaning. It's supposed to give us that. Then, well, how does Allah work? Allah works in the unseen, and actually Allah has powers that I can't even imagine. Malaikati. Allah has angels. Kutubihi. And did Allah just leave mankind and leave the rest of creation without any type of guidance? No, Allah didn't. Allah didn't leave people without guidance. He provided kutubihi. He provided instructions, wahi, written things to follow, the books. That's why you believe in the books. Then you ask the question, okay, is it just instructions? No, there were models for that instruction of how you're supposed to live out those books. Rusulihi, in the form of prophets. Allah. That's why the shahada, it's so important to not just say La ilaha illallah, but to say Muhammadur Rasulullah. People, many times when individuals convert into Islam, I can believe La ilaha illallah, but why is it essential for me to believe Muhammadur Rasulullah? Actually, it comes down to you don't understand Allah properly without understanding Muhammadur Rasulullah, because Allah is not a Lord that just created and left. He actively gave guidance to His creation in the form of messages and also examples. Rusulihi. And then the next one that comes after that, and the Day of Judgment. It is imperative for a Day of Judgment to exist, for the worldview of a Muslim to work. The Day of Judgment is a theological and actually a very practical necessity. If we're going to understand Allah as being the one who's the most merciful, a Day of Judgment needs to exist. If we're going to understand Allah as being the most loving, Day of Judgment is going to need to exist. If we're going to understand Allah to be the most just, Day of Judgment needs to exist. If we're going to understand Allah as being the most powerful and overpowering, Al-Qahar, Day of Judgment is going to need to exist. So every single one of these articles of belief actually says something about our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They all build on top of each other. And then I won't get into it for this class, but then the idea of the predestination as well, that Allah has already put a divine decree and everything follows His plan. That's also supposed to be something that it gives us safety and security, that I make plans and my plans don't always go through. But even when my plans don't go through, I know Allah has a bigger plan. So that's supposed to make me feel a little bit more confidence and not allow anxiety to eat me up. What if I mess up? I might ruin my whole life. You're giving yourself too much credit. You're not in charge of your life completely. Allah is actually in charge of your life. So it's supposed to give you a little bit of safety and serenity and security in that. But today's topic, again, was on the Day of Judgment. And I'm going to cover it a couple of different ways. I feel like I'm making a few disclaimers in the beginning, but how much time do I have? I want to make sure that I stick to at least some guideline of time. Because we could go until probably like midnight and we still wouldn't have covered everything that we want to.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. Okay, I will do my best, inshallah, to stick to that 8 o'clock time limit. But the reason I want to come across with a couple of these disclaimers, first one specifically talking about the Day of Judgment, I've alhamdulillah had an opportunity, and I still can't wrap my head around why I was in this gathering, but I went in 2014 to a gathering in Jordan in which religious extremism was being talked about. And actually what are the motivating factors behind religious extremism, and what are the mechanisms that people use when recruiting individuals to become quote-unquote radicalized. And there were some very high-level academics in there. I got to interface with Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayah for a very long time, and one of the things that constantly got brought up was actually the conversations around hadith and ayat talking about the Day of Judgment. The reason I bring this up, and I need us to be a bit mature about this, is because the topics of the signs of the Day of Judgment, the Day of Judgment itself, or anything related to eschatology is actually a very exciting topic for specifically young people to delve into. And I was just having this conversation with Omar a few hours ago, but it's because it's exciting. Like, I'm talking about the Day of Judgment. Isa alayhi salam is going to come back. There's going to be the Mahdi. This is going to happen. Oceans boiling over, mountains crumbling, right? It seems exciting. Actually, it sounds like a Michael Bay movie.
Yeah, sure. That's true.
There's like explosions everywhere and all of this kind of taking place. It's exciting. And actually a part of that, it's supposed to contain some of this excitement. It's supposed to be something we look at and we're supposed to be afraid of at a certain point. That's one of the purposes of all of these vivid descriptions that were sent down in the Quran, that are sent down to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the form of hadith. They're these vivid descriptions that are supposed to scare us and also kind of entice us. Like, it's supposed to capture our interest. But when we always need to temper that with the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When people would ask him, when is the Day of Judgment? He would give them descriptions as to when the Day of Judgment is, but he would also have a little bit of firasa, and he would look at them. And there was one moment where he responded, the Day of Judgment, actually, it's when you die. One of the times he answers that because he recognized that you worrying about the Day of Judgment is going to eat you alive, and you're not going to be able to function in life, so you prepare for your own death. That's a better response to signs of the Day of Judgment for that individual than sometimes describing it. And then there will be other times where he gives descriptions, but it's always tempered with a message of hope. One of the most sahih narrations, or it's found in Bukhari, but a narration where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions that if one of you finds yourself at a point where the Day of Judgment has started, and you have a date seed in your hand, plant that seed. Continue planting it. And people questioned, like, why would we do that? It takes 13 years for a date seed to give any fruit. He's like, you're going to be responsible for your effort. So even if the Day of Judgment is upon you, still plant a seed. There's still supposed to be a message of hope. One of the reasons I bring this up in the beginning as a disclaimer is conversations about the Day of Judgment are not supposed to depress us or make us feel like we're powerless. That too often becomes the result, and it's not healthy. It's not in the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He wouldn't mention narrations that caused companions to forget it, I'm so bad, the world, there's this Dajjal system and I can't do anything about it. I'm just going to sit here and mope. No, it was always a message of empowerment, it was always a message of hope, and always a message that there is success that's available. And that's the lens that I want to go through the Day of Judgment with. But with that, I'll also say that something that's really cool, one of the most vivid descriptions of the Day of Judgment, or the signs of the Day of Judgment that we've been given, are actually in Hadith Jibreel. The hadith that it occurs toward the end of the life of the Prophet ﷺ, and the hadith that many scholars have actually said that it's a summation of the entire message of the Prophet was found in this one hadith. And in it, I'm not going to go through the whole hadith, but Jibreel alayhi salam comes down and asks the Prophet about three things. He says, what is Islam, what is Iman, and what is Ihsan? And the Prophet responds with every single one of them. And then he says after that, what are the signs of the Day of Judgment? What is the day and what are its signs? And Rasulullah responds to him with some of the major and minor signs of the Day of Judgment. And something that's cool about that is that hadith is seen as a reflection of the entire literature of hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And actually the fractions do add up. About 1/4 of the hadith of Rasulullah are about the physical aspects of Islam and how we're supposed to behave, how we're supposed to pray, when we're supposed to pray, all of those components. About 1/4 of the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam deals a lot with what we would consider our factors of iman. What strengthens your belief and what weakens your belief. About 1/4 of the hadith of Rasulullah have to do with ihsan, this akhlaq component of how you behave with others and how you behave with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how you behave with yourself. And then just like that, about 1/4 of hadith literature is actually about the Day of Judgment, about these more eschatological concepts. And that's why today, when I was trying to prepare this talk, and actually the last couple of days that I was trying to prepare this talk, it was very difficult for me because typically what I would do, I'm going to talk about my method inshallah in a couple of different events, one happening this weekend, of how to prepare an Islamic reminder. But one of the things I usually like to do is I will literally look for the word that I'm going to be talking about in the Quran and try to read up at least one tafsir of every instance that it occurs in the Quran. So if I'm talking about like shamelessness, or a couple of weeks ago I talked about shaitan in that event, I will look every single place that the story of shaitan is found and at least read a little bit from its tafsir. I was not able to do that today because the Day of Judgment is found over 300 places in the Quran. And each time the conversation is something different. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to read through all of it before coming today. But one of the things, what I did want to focus on today, and I had asked some of the organizers if you can give me a template, what you want to be addressed on the Day of Judgment. And we arrived basically at this, that what I'm going to go through is an outline of the day itself, the Day of Judgment, and then we're going to have 3 case studies as to what occurs and what are important points for us to realize about the Day of Judgment. And those 3 the outline is going to be literally chronologically what happens first, the trumpet is blown, and then the actual judgment or the crossing of the sirat, what happens in between them. So we're going to go through that outline. And then the 3 case studies I'm going to do is all of humanity, how are they going to respond to the Day of Judgment? And that's found very vividly in one hadith. The next one is how are different groups of people going to respond? And I'm specifically using a couple of ayats found in Surah Al-Hadid, and I'll tell you once we get to those ayats which ones we're talking about, but it's one conversation that takes place, but it's also a conversation that's characteristic of everything that will be happening to groups of people on the Day of Judgment. And then third is at an individual level, what does an individual feel on the Day of Judgment? So that's going to be the 3 case studies I'm going to be using. One is based on a hadith, the second one is going to be based on a passage and a conversation that takes place in the Quran, and the third part of it is going to take place, is going to be one specific ayah of the Quran and how we can prepare as an individual for that moment. Make sense? I know I'm giving a lot of disclaimers before we even dive into it, but it's a very vast topic and I want to make sure we address it properly. So it's just not a bunch of random narrations all over the place, but we're systematically trying to understand the Day of Judgment today. And I don't mind interaction as well, so if people do want to ask questions or if I'm not making sense, feel free to let me know I'm not making sense, and I don't mind actually turning this into a dialogue at certain points as well. Yes?
Keep saying this word like
Eschatology, yeah, thank you. That's one of those words you pick up in college and it makes you feel smart. Eschatology is the study of end times. Actually, a funny story about eschatology is I co-taught a class in 2012, and it was right before the big 2012 thing. I co-taught this class, and our assignment was due on the 23rd of December. And we basically learned about eschatology or end times in different traditions, and I represented the Islam component of that tradition. And we basically ended off with your final paper is due on the 23rd, but if you think the world is going to end on the 22nd, don't worry about it.